Badenoch. Kashim Shettima's comments follow criticism by the Conservative leader of the country where she grew up. What do you make of this diplomatic row, if you like?
It's not a very good look for Kemi Badenoch, I would say. But ultimately, when politicians make comments like this, it's always for their own political capital. And I would say the comments of the Nigerian Vice President very much buy into something which is happening in the Nigerian media, where there are lots of media figures who attack Kemi Badenoch. And so the Nigerian Vice President has seen that and has decided he wants to cash in on that anger for the way that she's speaking about the country that she grew up in after she was born in England. But at the same time, you never saw Priti Patel or Rishi Sunak talk about India in the way that Kemi Badenoch talks about Nigeria. And I would simply say, if you are a Brexiteer and you're saying we need to be expanding our global trade beyond the European Union, we want to be looking at emerging markets for growth, fastest growing markets, don't slag off one of the fastest growing economies in Africa with one of the youngest populations that you have a personal link to. I mean, the Nigerian Vice President told her to change her name. That's embarrassing. Imagine how her family must feel about that. So I think she just needs to be a little bit more careful with her language. I think she can make the points that she makes about growing up in Nigeria without upsetting one of the biggest economies in Africa at the same time.
I mean, I suppose she might say, well, that was my experience. I'm just telling the truth as to how I saw it. I mean, she has actually hit back herself. This is from Lucy Fisher, the journalist. Kemi Badenoch hits back following criticism from Nigeria's Vice President. Kashim Shettima accuses her of denigrating her nation of origin. She was born here but grew up there, and suggests she could change her name, as you've said. And her special advisor hits back. Kemi is not interested in doing Nigeria's PR. She is the leader of the opposition in the UK.
But, Joe, I know people who lived in Nigeria in similar areas to Kemi Badenoch and went to similar schools to Kemi Badenoch who talk about a very different experience. I'm not saying those things did not happen to Kemi Badenoch, but the simple fact of the matter is there are other Nigerians, British Nigerians, even people within the Conservative Party who have said these things to me, who have been upset with her approach towards Nigeria. And I think she just needs to be careful not to be too critical, because you never saw British Indian senior Conservative politicians talking about India, similar countries, by the way, in that sort of way. You never heard Narendra Modi saying that about Priti Patel or Rishi Sunak. So why is the Vice President of Nigeria saying this about Kemi Badenoch?
What do you make of this in terms of Kemi Badenoch?
Well, look, Kemi has spoken about her experiences from when she grew up in Nigeria, which was several decades ago. I'm sure that Nigeria today is not the country that it was back then, but Kemi is also known for her very forthright style. Yes. She says it as it is. She's quite an honest politician. She's refreshing in that sense. And as she said, she's getting on with her job as leader of the opposition.
But should she be more diplomatic? I mean, it has caused something of a row here.
I think Kemi was elected as leader of the party in part because, she's got a very forthright style. She has spoken about this from her childhood, which was several decades ago. She is focusing on her job, holding this disastrous government to account.
Yes, but also, at the same time, surely, Bradley, we can agree, it must be pretty embarrassing for the Vice President of your parents' country of origin to tell you to change your name. Like, this is not good PR for Kemi Badenoch, let alone Kemi Badenoch doesn't want to do PR for Nigeria, but she should want to do PR for herself. And this isn't good PR for Kemi Badenoch, in my opinion.
Or is it, Ava, as you said earlier, Albie, a little bit of political spin even for the Vice President of Nigeria?
Well, I don't know. I think it would suggest that perhaps Kemi Badenoch's personality isn't quite suited to being leader of the opposition because, if she's someone who can sort of begin, or fuel a diplomatic row at whim and then not be too bothered about it. I mean, her response from her spokesperson is almost like a Teflon response. It's like, well, I said what I said and I don't really care. That's not really the way to conduct diplomatic negotiations, is it? Or relationships.